You're tuning into the This is Friendship podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, every week, we're so excited and so happy that you're here with us. I am, of course, here with my beautiful co hosts this morning.
Good morning or good evening, wherever we're coming to you from.
And Karli.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here again.
So nice to be here with you, ladies. We are talking about marketing and branding in this episode. We're coming off of 2 episodes where we discussed becoming an entrepreneur, and that included our individual journeys in addition to the This is Friendship podcast journey. I think all three of us really believe that marketing and branding key part of becoming an entrepreneur, and I think it's an area or an avenue where all three of us have had the opportunity to really grow in and have been in a position where we've needed to actually dig into marketing and branding from a learning perspective. So we're super excited to talk about that with you today. We believe that great brands inspire people to believe in what is possible. And I think all three of us would agree that is what we aspire to do in every episode of our podcast. With that, we'll transition to questions. I wanted to start us off first with the definition of a brand, because I think it can be different to different people. And I think sometimes people can look at it more from a creative perspective, and some people can look at it more from a relational or a relationship perspective. And I wanted to get both of your insights in terms of how you define or what a brand means to you. So Joy, with your go ahead, I will start with you. Joy, what does a brand mean?
Thank you for bringing this topic to all of our conversation tables. This is fun. I'm so excited we're going to talk about it. A brand. What does a brand mean to me? I feel like a brand is something very special and unique, and it is whatever makes you you. There's only one you. There's only one Andi, one Karli, one Joy, and nobody's going to do us like we do ourselves. So, whether that is through social media, through what we eat, what we see, what we experience, all of the above, I think all encapsulates our brand and how we present ourselves and represent ourselves. So I wanted to just switch over and pull a couple direct definitions of a brand, and I'll tie that in with what makes us us. A couple different definitions. One, a type of product manufactured by a particular company under a particular name. So I feel like that is a great example of how we are creating This is Friendship podcast. So that's our particular name and our particular company, which is really just some girlfriends gabbing and having fun together. And so glad you're here. Another one is a particular identity or image regarding an asset. So for me, I think this podcast is something tangible, something we can grab a hold of, something we can listen to and really dive in and immerse ourselves emotionally, physically, and in all the different ways. And then the last one, a particular type of kind of something. So to me, this particular type of kind of something is our friendship, and so unique. I feel like just as much as a brand is, a friendship is just as much unique as that. So I feel like our podcast coming together, our fun side project adventure is a little bit of a whole definition of brand all rolled into one big adventure.
I love the kind of something. We're creating a kind of something. It's like it's a feeling, it's emotions. Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
Karli, how about you?
Thank you, Andi, for the intro and for bringing this topic to the table for us to discuss today, and especially with our listeners that they can listen in and learn with us. And Joy, that was pretty awesome. I love those that had the firm definitions and then relayed it over. I define brand as, I guess, a story you tell, and then the feeling that story pulls from you. So when you relate it to what we're doing here with the podcast, our story is about our friendship and how we're three women living in three different decades of life, and how we have maintained our friendship that started purely as a coworker relationship. And here we are so many years later, and we're still friends. And then being able to communicate that feeling with our listeners of powerful, strong women who want to support and empower each other and bring others along with us. And hopefully our listeners are inspired and listen along with us and answer the questions that we talk about each week and the different topics. And I hope that they're also sharing that with other women in their lives to come on, let's talk about this ourselves. I listened to This Is Friendship this week, and they talked about this topic, and these are some of the questions they asked. And then they do that with their friends around their table or their cocktails or their glass of wine or whatever it is. So I hope that the story we're telling is inspiring, and we pull these feelings out of our listeners that they are our friends, because I do believe that, and that we are here to support and empower them just like we do with each other, and that they are then in turn doing that with their friends and other women in their lives. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Karli. And that's just a great reminder of, I think, why we started the podcast. I think that speaks a lot to our why and our mission. It was just a nice reminder of why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you for that, Karli. I agree with exactly what you said, which is it's the story that you tell. And on the other side of that is evoking emotion. I think that I've always looked at branding in terms of creating value, education, entertaining, inspiring, potentially promoting, although I don't think we lead with the promotion of things, but just what value are we adding? I think it is an emotional response to something visually and or to a person. And so to me, that is how I would define brand. We talked in our last episode about our businesses, our entrepreneur journeys in relation to those, and diving a little bit to describing our personal brands. That can be business related, that can be really kind of your definition. Would love to get your feedback on, Joy, we'll start with you again, please, how you define your personal brand.
Yes. I would say my personal brand, I like to be very focused and clean and clear and concise and to the point. Things that are easy to read, easy to understand, especially when everything is so quick. Everybody's got so many things going on in their lives. To get a quick snapshot of inspiration or of added value or something to evoke emotion. A quick snapshot is something that I am looking for when I'm looking for all those things, when I'm needing a piece of inspiration, when I'm needing to get excited about something, when I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for that quick, concise, clean, clear message that says, this is me. Here's your sign. So I would like to have that in my brand and my messaging as something to really be focused on and a clear, concise, direct message.
Thank you. I like this is your sign. This is your sign to follow me. This is your sign to tune into this podcast. This is your sign. This is what you've been looking for. Thank you. Karli, how about you?
So I thought about this question a little bit differently. I feel that my business brand, which is 823 Group Arizona, does feel like me, but it's not all about me. It's more about who I help and support along the way. So my personal brand, I took it as like, who am I personally? I'm answering that from that perspective right now. So my own personal brand, if someone were to look at me and put me into a brand concept, I would want it to be, she's a strong woman. She really cares about people. She would fight anything for her children and her family. She is a fierce protector of people she loves. And she's got a lot of energy, and it's very positive energy, and it emanates from me, and it's contagious. and I love life, and I want others to love it right along with me. So those are the things I think that make up my personal brand. If you talk about tying some passions into that, things that really light my fire are health and wellness and helping other women live lives full of health and wellness, home design and decor, and I think just style in general. Those are all things that light my fire.
I love that, Karli. And the listeners, based on how our Google chat goes, the listeners can't see my reaction or they can't see Joy's reaction when you're speaking. And the entire time that you were like describing yourself, Joy and I were like, yes.
Head nods over here.
So I think you beautifully articulated, and I think you emulate and you live out the brand that you just described.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also loved, Karli, how you're talking about your passions and what lights you up, because that becomes the contagious factor, I think, from a brand standpoint. And you attract your tribe. I think that everybody sees that in you. And I think that's just the energy that you bring. I think you absolutely attract that in your life. And I see it in your lifestyle and how you're exploring Arizona and just how much you love life. Describing your personal brand to me, I think I would lean on my Styled by Andi blog, and maybe a testament to what you just said, which is what our fires and what we're most passionate about. I think that brand has been an evolution. And when I started the blog, I said, gosh, you start a blog and see how quickly you start editing your life, how quickly you start realizing what's important. I think from a brand standpoint, I want it to be very relatable. I want to be able to add value. Like to Know It has come up a couple of times on our podcast, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. And I think making something easy, an easy connection for someone, it makes me feel like there's an extension of my brand. From a real estate standpoint, it's about developing trust and it's about developing relationships. My real estate brand errs on the side of being professional, ethics, integrity. I don't always inject a lot of color. It's more what's happening in the market, what's making the process easy. And then Styled by Andi is a little more get to know me and my personality. I try to find or keep a pretty straightforward brand between them. As a definition of our personal brand from a This is Friendship podcast perspective, we have had some beautifully curated content, and not everyone or our listeners don't always know who's behind the scenes doing what from a This is Friendship podcast perspective. So we wanted to take this episode to talk a little bit about our process, what has worked and maybe what hasn't worked for us when we've launched, now that we're half a year in. Karli, you are our in-house graphic designer.
Thanks to Canva for that.
If you're a listener and you've been following along on Instagram, you're seeing these beautiful audiograms, you're seeing this amazing color palette, you're seeing this content that is in line and in sync with our mission and what we're doing on a day in and a day out basis and from an episode perspective. And Karli is the visual mastermind, creative guru behind that. So Karli, if you would be willing to explain or just walk us through how that evolved, what your process is, maybe how that could potentially help someone else. You mentioned Canva, but other resources or things that you're utilizing to create this beautifully curated feed for us.
Sure. Andi's being very gracious and putting a lot of it onto my plate, but it really has been the three of us deciding. I just have been able to implement. So the ideas that we came up with when just at the way beginning, when we were talking about doing this, and we knew we wanted to have a podcast. We knew we wanted it to be the three of us. And so we did a lot of brainstorming about concept, and the thing that just shone through was what I mentioned earlier, the three of us being former coworkers that are now really good friends and continuing to support each other, even though we don't necessarily see each other very much in person. And I live much further away from you than maybe I would hope to be, but it's nice being able to connect here on our podcast every recording. session. But This is Friendship we were throwing around names, and I'm sure there's a bazillion podcasts out there. So trying to find something that wasn't already taken was a bit of a challenge. And then once we landed on the name, what the logo would look like, what kind of a background did we want to have that could communicate at first quick glance, Joy, that you mentioned, that little snapshot of maybe a little bit about we are. The This is Friendship logo is very girly, it's sparkly. And so then Andi, I think, landed on some really great fonts that we all loved. And then we pulled colors out of the background and went from there as far as brand colors. All of us decided on that. So for those of you who don't know, Canva, Canva, is a graphic design tool that anyone can use. You can get on and have a free account. Because of my 823 Group Arizona business, I have a premium account, a paid account. It's probably the best thing I ever spent money on to be able to create good looking branded posts and images. You can create anything there, flyers, posters, whatever. So I use that tool very heavily for both my 823, and I have been using it for This is Friendship. And so landing on those brand colors and the fonts, you're going to see those always. Now we're starting to move into showing more of us because we feel that we had a good run of having the feed look very nice visually when you land there on our Instagram account. And now you can get to know us a little more rather than just listening to us. We're starting to inject our own individual personalities into our social media as well. And the quotes all come from the episodes, the audiograms. We have a great editing platform that we use called Descript. And that allows you to create those audiograms, and you can create them in many different places, I'm sure. But that's just where it's easy for us because that's where we edit. That's easy place for us to create those. So I just go through and I listen to what snapshots that each of us have talked about that communicate what the episode is about. And then if you noticed and you pay attention to what the audiograms look like, it's that same sparkly background that's in our logo and the same colors. So those really, Canva's the best invention. And there's obviously other graphic design platforms. Over is one that I used to use, and I moved over to Canva, but I liked both of those quite a bit. I think it's a combined vision. I just have been the one who has been doing the most of the design work, but based on what all of us came up with as a team.
And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
At some point, we will have to go back and take a look at all of our bloopers because usually the three of us are hysterically laughing, and we'll have to share those with all of them as well. And Karli also took on a big project with our website as our branding and our colors and our content was evolving. We all felt strongly that we needed or wanted the audio files for the podcast to be housed on a website as well. And you also had a beautiful vision for Instagram for the link in bio where followers or people that are tuning in can just click on that and can just basically go to all things marketing for This is Friendship podcast.
Yes. So that is for those of you out there who use link in bio. If you have a website, it's a great way to get people to your website, to drive your website traffic instead of sending them to a link in bio page. So you can basically if you go to our Instagram and you click on the link, then you're going to actually be on our website, but you can click on all the different options there. And I haven't spent a lot of time developing that page necessarily. I'm sure that there are other options that we could, as we evolve and grow, we'll be able to tweak how that looks visually, but it gets people to our website. So then all they have to do is click on one of the images, and that drives them to that place in our website, or to join our email list, or to do whatever it is that we have talked about that we put there on that page of our website. And then our website itself is based on Squarespace. And since I do a lot of website work with my own 823 Group Arizona website, it was easy for me to create ours and be able to use that same, because since I'm so familiar with doing that on Squarespace. So that's where that's hosted right now. But our website, we did definitely want people to be able to go there and listen. That is a great just one-stop shop. They don't have to necessarily we have a lot of Spotify listeners. We have a lot of Apple Podcast listeners. That's probably the biggest base of listeners right now of where people listen, but you can find us wherever you like to listen, as you hopefully know, since you are listening to us. But a lot of people have started to get to us from our website too, I have noticed on our statistics. But yeah, our website will continue to grow and evolve, and that's really where we want to base our community, which is a few phases down. So our first phase is joining our email list. So we'd love to have you there if you can.
Thank you, Karli, for walking us through the behind the scenes marketing, for being our marketing guru, for being our in-house graphic designer, and just taking the lead on that. Joy is our consistency queen, and she has developed for us a way to hold each other accountable and just basically keep us on track. So we've got a lot of episodes that we're working on. We record sometimes 4 weeks in advance, maybe even a little bit longer, maybe a little bit shorter. And she has created and developed this amazing system for us where we can just log in and jump in and figure out where we're at. So Joy, if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about how you're keeping us consistent and maybe the processes and the things that you've brought to This Is Friendship for all three of us.
You bet. Now, first, Miss Karli, I feel like you're definitely being modest about how quickly you can whiz up these awesome marketing, Instagram, amazing things, and all these new additions with the website. Just pop. Oh, hey, by the way, I've got this awesome website, and we're doing this, and we're adding this. I'm like, oh my goodness, awesome. This is so crazy. Before I could even think about it or blink, it's done. And she makes it look like it's chocolate cake. So I think you're definitely modest, and thank you so much for just your magic. It's like magic fairy dust that you just sprinkle across everything and makes poof, magic.
Well, it's definitely one of those had to learn, and I like it. So it's because I've spent a lot of time doing it in the last 2 years. When you get better at things, you can do them more quickly and efficiently. So you're starting maybe at a beginning level, which I'm 2 years into the process. So not fair to compare your beginning to.
Thank you for all of your hard work, and it's beautifully done.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so jumping to more of our communication tools, it's so nice because we are in different locations and all accessing information and working on things at different times. A great communication tool is Google Drive, Google Spreadsheets, and Google Docs, all kinds of Google documents. We just have a really big Google Sheets spreadsheet that we can have all of our fun little notes in one place and just have one tab up and have everything we need. So we have everything from our very initial ideas when we were first talking about, we were at dinner celebrating Andi getting married, and we said, you know what, let's do a podcast. And everybody else says, yeah, let's do this. So from the very, very beginning egg stages of just brainstorming ideas and topic ideas, Karli, you mentioned a little bit, and Andi mentioned a little bit about some tidbits, how we started the conversation and different points throughout the marketing and brand process, the creative ideas of what were we really wanting to accomplish in this podcast, and what audience did we want to reach? Who did we want to help and make them feel like they weren't alone and help them in their day-to-day lives or whatever they're going through? So from topic ideas, that's where it started, and then we just rolled with it. We have another focus sheet of kind of a yearly calendar, 52 weeks in the year, most years. And on there, we've got an organized kind of calendar layout of when we want to ideally release and when we ideally want to record, and those days and times that kind of work best for us. And of course, this is always evolving and changing because life is always evolving and changing. So we want to keep this spreadsheet as flexible and up to date and always changing as we need to or we can with our schedules or whatever we've got coming up in our lives. We have a starting of a community plan, what kind of mission we want to accomplish, and who we'd love to reach out to, who we'd love to help, and the ways that we'd like to help them. So we spoke about our email list a little bit, about how we can we're starting to gather our groups of friends that are here listening, you guys, talk about our brand details, organize, have just one place where we have almost like a nucleus of where we go for social media content. If we are helping out or growing, which Karli's done most of our awesome work, but if we need to slip in and make edits or create new things, then we can have all of that information in one place so that we can reach at any time. We also talked about inspiration, the podcasts that we loved and why we loved them, what made us want to listen, and what were the things that drew us in and kept us going, why we took time out of our busy lives to tune in while we're washing dishes or folding some laundry or on our commute or wherever. We talked about those types of podcasts and who inspired us. And we really talked about women that are empowering us to make changes, to continue on, to be the best that we can be. And also know that we're all human. We don't have to be perfect in every way. Those are all things, inspirations that we were pulling from, and almost like building this clay mold of what we wanted. This is real, this is fun, this is friendship podcast to be, with a little bit of brainstorming, inspiration, research, and things like that. Andi had a ton of influence on researching all these different kinds of platforms and hosting and what type of tools we were going to use. So we have that on a spreadsheet as well too, of where we go to look up all these different things and the comparatives of what would be best for us and our podcast, and where would it be best today, and where would we want it to be best maybe as we continue to grow. Karli and Andi both had so many great research ideas and could really dig in and find out what was the best fit for us. So if there's any of our listeners out there, we want to encourage you to maybe take some of the same process, or maybe what works for you, maybe not the whole piece of it, whatever parts would be really helpful for you, and just do a little self-reflecting and dig in, have fun with it, and go from there. And it's totally a learning curve. We're learning as we go too. So then we have got a space where we've got some snapshots of how we'd like to organize each of the different episodes, about what kind of topics we'd like to cover. We have a space where we have our intro and outro, the things that we want to make sure every listener gets a chance to hear, because that's the message we want everybody to be going home with. So that's a little bit of our communication tools that just can bridge our gaps and can be there for us as a communication tool when we physically can't, either in person, virtually, or in text, or whatever it may be.
Thank you, Joy. That also brought me back to the early planning stages, because we've come so far, and then I think it's good to have those reminders. One thing that came to my mind too is I think we were all on board with the first episode doesn't have to be perfect. We need to just do it. And so if you've been dreaming about a podcast, or you've been dreaming about doing something, just do. You might have a blooper or two, but in a few years, you can look back and you can laugh and see how far you've grown and see how far you've come. Joy, you also talked a lot about the roadmap. All three of us, none of us had started a podcast in the past. And so it was a learning curve for us. And So from a roadmap standpoint, we did the research and kind of came to the conclusion, or we found out that you have to have a recording platform because the three of us are in different locations. From a recording standpoint, we landed on Google Meet. We tried a couple of different platforms and just ended up loving how Google Meet looked from a video perspective. So Google Meet is our recording platform. Every podcast has to have a host, and we of course did some research and landed on Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is where we upload our weekly episodes. And then, of course, from an editing standpoint, Descript is a big go-to for us to create video, of course, but then also to create our sound files. Those were some of the things, and those are the things that we're utilizing right now to continue to tell our story on a weekly basis. And then every episode gets recorded and then, of course, edited before it comes out on the sound waves or the video waves to you. And traditionally, we have a host of a podcast for the week, and that person then does the editing because it's through their lens. They're the ones that are leading the conversations and are then able to edit it and put it into a form that can come out. From a process standpoint, those are the things that we really lean on and that we utilize. And it did take us a little while to do the research and come up with that game plan, but for now, that's what's working for us. And we definitely have a great, consistent process in place, thanks to Joy and beautiful branding. Thank you to Karli, who I agree with Joy is very modest in terms of her knowledge and her skills and everything that she's done for us. Transitioning into our last question for the episode, I thought it would also be a good way for us to just come back to our why. And I think the main question is, what is the one thing you hope our followers and our listeners take from our podcast? And Joy, I'd like to start with you, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Right now, the one thing that I want our followers to take away from is just that they're not alone. Whatever they're experiencing, whatever they're going through, life is wild and crazy and it's a roller coaster. And we love life, but it's also better with friends. And I think good friends, you can feel a hug through a text, you can feel a hug through a phone conversation, you can feel a hug through a podcast. You can feel a hug through just a smile. So if it's YouTube that you're watching, I think not being alone is really important because that time that we spend in our life, we're never going to get back. And if we don't have to do it alone, if we can do it with people that are supporting us and loving us and encouraging us and giving air high fives virtually or physically or a hug, that's just one of the best feelings in the world. So I don't want our followers to feel alone. Everyone struggles, but we don't have to do it alone. And we definitely rise by lifting others. So I think that in a sense of community is what I want all of our listeners to come away from feeling after they're tuning in.
Thank you, Joy. Karli, how about you?
So I wrote down two different things, very similar to what Joy said. This is great that we all are, well, so far we're in alignment, and I think, Andi, you're not far off either. Women supporting women is powerful was the first thing that I jotted down. And I hope that our listeners walk away from, again, us supporting each other, us supporting the people listening to us, our listeners supporting the women in their lives. It goes along with Joy, what you said, that we're not in this alone. And there's a lot that people don't, there's a lot that women specifically do not talk about for whatever reason. And I'm hoping that we can break some of those stigmas on This Is Friendship through our conversations and through feedback that our listeners give us and ideas that they tell us they want us to talk about, maybe something that they're going through in their lives and they really want to hear us talk about it. I think that is so powerful. And to be, what goes along with that is we need to support other women. We shouldn't be breaking each other down. We need to lift each other up. And you're not going to be in love with everybody, and that's okay. But there's no reason to knock them down there's no reason to knock somebody down. And so to me, women supporting women is powerful. And then the second thing is friendship is life's happiness. You don't get to pick your family, you get to pick your friends. And so your friends should be people that you love spending time with and you enjoy and that lift you up, and you give to them and they give it back to you in return. And they make your life happier and they make your life better. So those are the things I hope our listeners are feeling when they listen to us, and that when they end that episode, they feel good. And then they want to go share that with the girls in their life and the women in their life.
That ripple effect.
Yes, it's huge. It's to know that we all, as individuals, stand in a spot where we can send out we can drop that little stone and have those ripples go out and affect the other women in our lives. That's pretty powerful. And we do it here with each other. We hope we are doing it with you, our listeners. And we hope that you do that too with the women in your life. That's incredible.
Beautiful. Thank you, ladies. So well said. Better with friends. Friendship is life's happiness. Beautiful. I, of course, would echo all of that. I just hope it's a source of inspiration, in addition to Joy, how you articulated that you hope that it resonates and it spills over into their lives from the podcast. And Karli, what I got from you is the intentionality of it and lifting others up. And we just want to be a source of positivity for our listeners. So thank you so much. This is where we'll conclude our branding and marketing episode. I think that we need to throw it back to our outro just for fun and just as a reminder of our why and our branding.
This is real.
This is fun.
This is friendship.